Hello, my name is Jeb Sherrill, and I am not a guitar teacher. Hey guys, welcome to what I'm hoping is going to be a really fun lesson because today you're going to start building your own chairs and coming to understand what those notes are, which is just going to help you understand all the notes within a key or all the notes within a scale shape, however you want to look at that. So thus far we have just been using the G shape, the G chair, and the reason I've been teaching you the G chair is because if you know the G chair, you also know the E minor chair. And if you know those two, you can actually do an awful lot. Also, because you're memorizing this group of notes, and hopefully by now you've started memorizing the actual notes in the chair, G, A, B, D, and E, because if you do, you'll start knowing what the notes are in all these positions. Your brain will just start locking onto these shapes and knowing where those notes are. So that really helps you when you want to build other chairs, because you'll know these notes and you can build a chair off those notes, if that makes any sense. First of all, we're going to do a little bit of review on the chair guitar over here. So I'm going to switch guitars for just a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, we haven't brought this guitar out in a while, I don't think since the very first episode, but hopefully now it doesn't look like quite as much of a mess as it used to, because if you cover all of this up and you cover all of this up, you'll see that we just have the same three chairs that we've been working with through the rest of these episodes. Of course, the back of the next chair down the corner here. But really just these three, because this is going to start teaching you a whole lot about the real layout of the fretboard and how to understand it. If you drew a line from this corner of the guitar down to this corner, and another line from this corner to this corner, making kind of an X, you're going to start understanding a little more about how the fretboard is really laid out. Because yes, the lower notes are at the top and the higher notes are at the bottom, but far more precisely, from here to here are new notes, and from here to here are repeated notes. And all you have to do is look at the chairs to see that. So, we know these three chairs pretty well now, and we can start realizing how this stripe of chairs repeats. Because what happens is each stripe is identical, but it's just slid over a string. So in other words, we have this green chair right here. If we slide over one string, we get to this green chair. It's the exact same chair, it's the exact same notes, it's not a different octave, it's the exact same 5 notes, except that this note right here, this back of the chair, is above the nut. So obviously you can't get to that note. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're the exact same 4 notes. This blue chair right here is exactly the same as this blue chair right here, except that it's crossing the B string, so these 2 notes are getting slid down. Again, that's something we'll learn to deal with a lot better later. But for the moment, you can see that blue chair is the same as this blue chair. So they are repeating this direction and they're different this direction. Now, this is going to help you start really getting the format of this down. One thing you're going to notice is that when you do these little bridges, the 1-4, 1-4, 1-4, 1-4, 1-4, at the bottom of that 1-4, which means there's 2 frets in between, these 2 notes right here, this little green strip, is identical to this green strip. So these 2 extra notes are identical to these 2 extra notes. In other words, you can play those notes either place. You can play them right beside these 2 notes, or you can slide down and play them here. And there's different reasons you might do that, but what's more important is simply that you start understanding that that's the way the layout works. Because when you start seeing these chairs in these different positions, it just starts clicking with how the fretboard is really laid out, if that makes any sense. Anyway, on to the rest of the lesson. So back to our regular chair guitar, this is where you're going to start building different chairs. Because hopefully you'll know that one chair pretty well, and all you have to do is slide it up and down. I want you to start on the low E and just pick a note. For instance, this note right here. Now hopefully you already know the notes within this chair, and if you know the notes in this chair, you know the notes in this chair and this chair, and when those start locking in, you'll start knowing what notes are when you hit them. For instance, we'll start here, and because this is the low E string, we know the first note is going to be an F. If we go down 2, we're going to get to G. We know that because it's the root of this chair. So, F, G, we know that's A. The one beside it, we may not know because we haven't used the 2 extra diatonic notes a whole lot. We do know this note. We know that's a D, and so up above it is a C. And down here is that E. We know that if we want to build another chair right beside it, we just go to the next 2 notes. We know that these 2 notes are going to be identical to these 2 notes. So, and that's what I want you to do. Build a chair, build another chair, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, you're going to go over just like you would for these other chairs, but because you're at the B string, you're going to slide down 1 note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're just going to go up and down. And you're going to mess up. It's going to happen because you have a 3 and a 2 and a 3 and a 2, and sometimes your brain is going to go, wait a minute, is that a 3 or a 2? And it's going to mess you up. But don't worry, you're going to get used to that. That's part of why, actually that's a huge part of why I use an asymmetrical shape for the chair system instead of adding in those 2 extra notes, because the 2 extra notes make it more symmetrical. And so you've got a 3 and a 3 and then 1 up here, or a 3 and a 4, depending on how you want to look at it, and it's harder to see in your head, which is why it's a whole lot easier to get this chair shape and then add in those extra 2 notes. So you can come down here, and you're just going to go back and forth. Now, first of all I want you to do is just learn that shape. Just play with that shape all over the place, just like this. Slide up and down this low E string, making those chairs up and down. And then if you want to figure out the notes, you can. It's just a really easy way to automatically know what notes are in these chairs. Now, I know in the past, you'll often hear me say, don't worry about the notes, don't worry about what they're called, just worry about the positions. And that's for a really good reason, in my opinion. I'm doing that because notes are kind of abstract. When you call them something, A, B, C, D, F sharp, D sharp, those are all just labels. They're just words. They don't actually mean anything. You could call them Fred and Velma and Barney if you wanted to. It really wouldn't matter what you called them. Of course, the reason we use those letters is because that's something everybody knows all over the world. It's kind of an international language, and so that's how we can talk to each other. But when you're just playing, all that really matters is those intervals. So learning the intervals is a great way when you're just playing. And then when you need to know something, you can look at it and go, oh yeah, that's what that letter is. Oh yeah, that's what that letter is. That must be a C. Yeah, that must be a C. And that must be a D. And there's different techniques that you can come up with for that. Actually, I'm going to go over a little bit of that with you right now. Why not? But first of all, Please like and subscribe. This really does help the channel. It helps me keep going. Hopefully soon I'll get a Patreon up and we can get that going. But for the moment, just like and subscribe. It's very helpful. It was very hard for me to memorize the notes, and I don't know why. The notes of just the open strings. It seems kind of stupid that every time I would memorize these, the next time I would pick up the guitar, I would go, what notes were those again? And so I had to come up with a system for associating all those strings so that I could remember them. Now, you can do this any way you want. I'm only going to tell you the way I do it. First of all, the two strings at the end are E. Those are kind of easy to remember because you know your guitar is tuned to E. So that's your low E, that's your high E. So you're always going to know the note on over here and the note over here are going to be identical. Here they're E, here they're both F, here they're both F sharp, and it's going to be that way all the way down the fretboard. How do you remember the next note? Well, I remember it because it's where an A starts, or an A minor starts. And so I remember some of the notes purely by what chords start on them. Like, I know an E minor starts on this first string. I know an A minor starts on the second string. And so anytime I need to think about it, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's an A. That's where A starts. That's where A minor starts. This string, D, well, guess what? That's where a D starts. So if you make a D chord, it starts on that D. The G, how do you remember the G? Well, I remember it because it's the most annoying string on the guitar. It's the one that always goes out of tune. If I bend that G string, it's really irritating. I'm always having to retune it. And so the G string is the annoying string on the guitar. So it's easy to remember. E, A, that's where my A chord starts. D, that's where my D chord starts. G, that's where the annoying note is, or the annoying string, is that G string. The next string is easy to remember because it's a B. B is that string that slides down one note. And it's irritating for a totally different reason. So I remember the G and the B because they're both irritating. I remember the E's because that's what the whole guitar is tuned to. The A because that's where the A chord begins. The D because that's where the D chord begins. The G, the B, and the next E. And once you just remember those notes, it's a lot easier when you're creating a chair to be able to count down to it, which you're going to do for a little while because it's not like any of us just memorize the whole entire fretboard. I'm sure some people try to do that, but so long as you know what's at the top and you build chairs, you can figure out what the notes are. And far more importantly, when you remember these, those will start giving you landmarks because you'll start remembering notes here and there for all kinds of different reasons. Like you may remember the G because it's at the top of this chair. You may remember the E because it's at the bottom of this chair. And so your brain will start remembering where those E's are, where those G's are. And then when you break out into other chairs, you're going to start doing the exact same thing in your head. It's all really just association, and it just takes time. And I will see you guys next time.